Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona, and welcome to this preview of the Kentucky Oaks, the feature race on Friday at Churchill Downs. And I'm happy to be joined for this stakes preview by my Timeform US colleague, Craig Milkowski. Craig, it's been a little while since we've done one of these videos together, but happy to have you back for Kentucky Derby at Oaks Week.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on. I've missed doing these videos, believe it or not. I just have some other things I have to do. Hopefully, I can pick back up in the summer, but no way I was going to miss Derby week.
Yeah, fortunately, tracks are having trouble timing races still, so you're pretty busy with all the other stuff that you have on your plate. But happy to have you this week, and we're going to take a look at these two major races from Churchill Downs on Friday and Saturday. The feature of this video, though, is the Kentucky Oaks. Let's throw up the field for this race. We've got a full field signed on, 14 runners, one also eligible entrant, and we do have a clearly defined morning line favorite in the number 4 Nest. She's listed at 5-2, just a couple ticks below the other two horses that were expected to take a lot of money. The number 7 Echo Zulu, the third choice, at 4-1, and the number 10 Kathleen at 7-2. Personally, I'm not that sure who's going to wind up the favorite in this race because it seems like they all have bandwagons coming in here.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know who. I would lean towards Echo Zulu just based on the undefeated record, the fact she's the Breeders' Cup champion. I know her return didn't look as good as some of her other races, but I also don't think she was fully cranked. And I suspect she's going to take the most money.
Yeah, she's got that undefeated record intact, and horses like that, they do often have that air of invincibility about them until they lose it. Kathleen falls into that category as well. Both of them have never lost a race. We shouldn't give short shrift to the rail-drawn horse, the number 1 Secret Oath, listed at 6-1 on the morning line. She's dropping out of that effort against the boys in the Arkansas Derby, so we'll see what she does back with members of her own gender. They're the 4 major players in this race, but there are some others that you make in case for. We're going to go through a lot of the field. Before we get to the contenders, though, Craig, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. There's not an abundance of speed signed on, but I'm not surprised to see that fast pace flag showing up given the large field and the presence of those two likely early leaders, the number 6 and 7.
Yeah, this is one of those. I'm not sure I really agree. It's going to be like a hot pace up front. It's one I'm working on adjusting. We talked about it before for the younger horses, the 3-year-olds, where we don't give as much credit unless the horse is a leader, but it hasn't been completed yet. So for now, it'll say fast pace, but I think that's kind of iffy. It looks more like kind of a tactical race with Ugiri and Echo Zulu and maybe the others kind of just watching to see what they're going to do.
Let's move on to look at some of the contenders for this race, and we're going to begin with that morning line favorite, the number 4 Nest, listed at 5-2. Let's take a look at her last out victory in the Ashland Stakes, and it was a pretty impressive one. That is her taking over on the front end in those micropoly silks. Short stretch at Keeneland for this race, but she doesn't need that much time to pull away from this field because she just turns on the jets in the stretch and opens up to win by over 8 lengths. Craig, the big question I have about this race is how strong was this field that she was beating, and is this impressive victory a little bit of an optical illusion?
Yeah, I tend to think it is. I mean, she got a decent speed figure, a 112, which is competitive in here. But when horses are runaway winners like this, I like to see dominant speed figures. And that's not what we saw from Nest. And when you look back through the chart in Timeform US at the horses she was facing, both in this and her previous win at Tampa, there's just not a lot of quality in there. So I tend to downgrade this number just a little bit. And I'm going to try to beat her as the 5-2 favorite, as we'll get to later on.
Yeah, it does feel like Nest has really stepped forward as a 3-year-old, but like you were saying, it's hard to be sure because she really hasn't faced much tough company in these last couple starts. I guess the best horse that she's met between the Tampa race and the Keeneland race was Cocktail Moments, and she's hardly considered one of the top contenders in this Kentucky Oaks. So I think Nest is going to get a real class test here, but she does seem like the kind of filly who will relish the slight stretch out to 1 1/8. She did handle that distance in the Demoiselle, and she's certainly bred to run all day, so that could work in her favor. But if she's 5-2, that feels like a pretty low price on a race or in a race where you've got 4 major contenders, all of whom deserve to take money. Let's move on to that horse that has the undefeated record, Echo Zulu, the 2-year-old champion from last year. And let's take a look at the race in which she earned that championship, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Craig, she was really impressive on this day. Sure, she got to control on the front end, but she ran away from these horses in the stretch. Didn't look like the 1:16 was any problem for her on this occasion. But I think the concern is, has she come back as the same horse as a 3-year-old?
Yeah, and I think that is a major concern. She actually ran faster than the Colts did on Time Form US speed figure. She got a 15 or 115, whereas Corniche had ran, I think it was a 113. And it seemed impressive at the time. But looking at the form of that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, maybe it's not quite the accomplishment it seemed at the time. And there's got to be some serious questions if she's the same horse at 3 that we saw at 2. Sure, she did come back. She won the Fairground Oaks, but her speed figure regressed a little bit, and just the visual was not as good. Now, I would imagine she wasn't fully cranked up for this race. The Oaks was already obviously the main target. She was always going to get in because of the points from that Breeders' Cup Juvenile filly. So she's a little bit of an iffy pick for me, and it will kind of depend on the tote board. I have a feeling she's going to get bet a little heavier, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think she's the kind of horse where you do want to let price be your guide, because based on that performance last time, she's got something to prove in this race. It's not always a guarantee that these impressive, precocious 2-year-olds will carry that form forward into their 3-year-old seasons, and some of them even regress after being so precocious as 2-year-olds. So remains to be seen which category she falls into. That effort last time out in the Fairgrounds Oaks, it's not going to get it done here. Remember, Hidden Connection, who she beat by a nose that day, she was 13 lengths clear of her in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile filly. So it feels like maybe some things have changed in the months since then. She's got to take a step forward here and potentially deal with the early speed of that other frontrunner Ugiri, who's drawn to her inside. Let's take a look at another one of the undefeated contenders in this race, the number 10 Kathleen O, and her victory last time out in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. You know, Craig, I was saying I wasn't sure what was behind Nest in the Ashland. I don't think any of the preps had a weaker field in this Gulfstream Park Oaks. As you can kind of see, there were 2 real horses in the race and just kind of nobody else as they're fading off the screen. But Kathleen O, I mean, she does win going away like she always does. Just seems like she keeps getting better with every start.
Yeah, it's hard for me to get a good read on her just because, as you say, she is one who has faced even less competition than Nest has. We see the same cocktail moments in her past performances as maybe the best horse she's beaten. Maybe it's Goddess of Fire, but I don't think either one of them are serious contenders in here. But with the style she has, and if she gets some pace up front, I do think she's going to be dangerous. It's just really tough to get a handle on her based on that competition.
Yeah, and the other concern with Kathleen O is that she's just got that running style where she is likely to be closing from 12th, 13th, maybe even 14th in this Kentucky Oaks. I mean, she just almost always drops back to last, has no early speed, and it's not that easy to pass the mall in a large field like this in the Kentucky Oaks. And she, like all the others, will be stepping up to face the toughest group of rivals that she's ever met. So definitely some things to prove for Kathleen O in this race. But like I was saying, she's a progressive sort. She goes out for Shug McGahee and the kind of trainer that does get these horses to keep improving. So there are some positives on her. Just another one where you want to see how low the price ends up. Craig, I know you and I are both interested in that horse that's drawn down towards the rail, the number 1 Secret Oath. Let's actually go 2 back and take a look at her Honeybee when she was so impressive, winning off by over 7 lengths. Again, she was not beating the toughest fields in these filly restricted races at Oaklawn Park, but she does it in dominant fashion. I mean, the way that she drew off in this race and the Martha Washington, I mean, it's pretty jaw-dropping.
It was, and she ran a big speed figure. She got a 112 in the Honeybee, which is right up there with all the top contenders. What I find interesting about her is she tried that Arkansas Derby next time out, which you couldn't blame the connections with the ease of her victories. And I think an argument could be made. She might have been the best horse in there, but she just had a brutal trip that day. Didn't get a great ride. She made a pretty jaw-dropping move around the turn, even caught the announcer, got a little overexcited, I would say, but she flattened out late. But I think she had every excuse in the world to flatten out late. So I kind of look at her as if she had ran in the Fantasy instead of the Arkansas Derby, she likely wins that race and wins it easily. And she'd probably be coming in here as the pretty heavy morning line favorite. So maybe that's throwing people off a little bit. But if she's anywhere near that 6-1 or even in the 4-1 range for me, she's one that looks like she's going to offer a lot of value. And I'm expecting a big race from her.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that she did not get the best ride in the Arkansas Derby last time. And frankly, I'm not surprised to see there be a rider switch for this race to Luis Saez. It does seem like it's a rider upgrade. I agree. She maybe would have been right there at the end of the Arkansas Derby if she hadn't gotten shuffled back on the backstretch and made that early wide move on the far turn. And Craig, another thing that I find interesting about Secret Oath is we're talking about horse after horse at a short price in this race that is making a big jump up in class. And you can see it in the Timeform US race ratings. I believe the projected race rating for the Kentucky Oaks is a 113. And most of the runners that we talked about, like Nest and Echo Zulu and Kathleen O, are really jumping up from the race ratings that they got in their prior starts. The only horse that's coming out of a race that received a higher race rating is Secret Oath. So she might be actually dropping in class in a race where most of her main rivals are moving up in class. So I agree with you. If she's anywhere near that 6-1 morning line, or maybe even a couple ticks lower than that, I think she's pretty interesting in this race. Another horse that won one of the major final round preps for this is the number 2 Nostalgic. Let's take a look at her victory in the Grade 3 Gazelle at Aqueduct in early April. On this day, she is beating Venti Valentine, who is the horse that's coming into the stretch with the lead right there to her outside. Craig, Venti Valentine drifts off the rail just a little bit, and Nostalgic runs through inside. They both got great trips.
They did. Unfortunately, this just came back a really slow race. She only got a 102 speed figure for the win. I think it was more of a case of heavy favorite Venti Valentine regressed off of her prior victory. Then Nostalgic took some big jump up. So for me, she's more of kind of the B team for Todd Pletcher in here. Just not a big fan of her. She would have to make a huge jump.
Yeah, I do feel like Nostalgic is the kind of filly that's improving. I'm not sure that she's quite up to this task yet because she really hasn't met the kind of competition that she's going to face in the Oaks. I mean, she tried Nest and Venti Valentine in the Demoiselle as a 2-year-old, wasn't quite at that stage then. She might not be there yet, but I do feel like she's one that's improving and could be a factor in this division later in the summer. Maybe when you get to a race like the Alabama going a mile and a quarter, I think that she's going to want to go farther. We'll just see if she continues developing at this rate, but this might be asking a lot of her on the first Friday in May. Craig, a horse that I'm not really sure what to do with in this Oaks is Desert Dawn. Let's take a look at her winning the Santa Anita Oaks last time, and she's beating a pretty good horse in this race in a dare manner. That's a dare manner between horses. And Desert Dawn kind of makes that blitz to the lead on the outside, surprising her and holding on as Dare Manor tries to battle back through the stretch. She was 14-1 this day, so surprising that she won, but she earned a pretty nice speed figure.
Yeah, she did. She ran a 114. Before I get into her, obviously Nostalgic is not Todd Pletcher. He had so many, I got her confused with another one in here. But yeah, Desert Dawn, I don't think there's anything really phony about her last race. The 14-1 odds might be a little bit deceiving because there was a very heavy favorite in here, Dare Manor, who I guess did not get enough points for the Oaks. I'm not sure why she's not in here, but she would have came in with the fastest speed figures in the field. So you know, I think she's a horse who wouldn't shock me if she won. I just wonder if running in those small field races in California in this particular case is not going to be to her benefit. She might get shuffled back a little farther than she's used to, but she is a horse I considered having in my top selections. It was a pretty close cut. And honestly, if she's anywhere near that 20-1 morning line, I would definitely use her in some of the underneath slots.
Yeah, it does feel like she's a horse that is moving forward, kind of like Nostalgic, maybe at the right time. She did not get the right pace setup too back when she was 4th in the Santa Isabel. But again, that was not the strongest field. She did beat a good horse in a Dare Manor last time. And you're right, a Dare Manor kind of making that one prep outside of the Bob Baffert barn did not accrue enough points to make it into the Kentucky Oaks, unfortunately, because she might have been a player in this race. Desert Dawn beat her. We'll see what kind of pace setup she gets here. Phil D'Amato, for as much as he does well, winning races outside of California, not really his forte. So she'll probably be a big price if you want to get her in there somewhere. But she is an interesting horse based on that last race. One more contender to discuss is a horse drawn all the way on the outside, the number 13, Shahama. Let's take a look at her winning her last race back in mid-February over in Dubai, the Group 3 UAE Oaks, and that is her with that big white face ranging up outside of horses. I mean, Craig, she's kind of a wild card in here. It doesn't feel like she was beating particularly strong competition over at Meydan, but she certainly looks good winning these races.
She looks good, but as is usually the case, I think these races at Meydan are a bit deceiving. The time form rating came back really low. I did some rough speed figures for this day. It was run a few weeks before the UAE Derby, maybe even a month before, so you couldn't really compare them directly. But for me, it was just a slow race, and if she wins, I'll be out because I just don't see this kind of jump in her.
Yeah, she's got a big pedigree. She's a half sister to Looking at Lucky, so I think that's one reason that she's attracted a lot of attention. She's got that big white face, so she's obviously a flashy horse to look at. But I kind of agree with you. She's going to have to take a big step forward from her prior form overseas to be a contender here. Has trained well, but not always the quickest horse out of the gate. And with that outside post position, she could be in for a difficult trip. Craig, let's throw up our picks for this race. And frankly, I'm not that surprised that we agree a lot. I know we had talked about some of these horses on our podcast leading up to this, and I know we have similar feelings about the horse that we both picked on top, the number one Secret Oath. As we were saying, just feel like she didn't get the right trip last time, and dropping back in against her own gender, I think she's got a big shot.
Yeah, like I said, I think her form's a little bit dirtied up. People are maybe underestimating how good that race was. As I said, had she ran in the fantasy and won easy, she'd probably be bet much more heavily. So I think she's just as good as some of the others in here. The rest, they're all pretty hard for me to separate. Nest is obviously solid, just has some questions about the competition, as does Kathleen O. So I settled on those for 2 and 3. A horse we really didn't talk about much was Ugiri, who I selected in 4th. And she's a horse, if Echo Zulu doesn't show up, she's shown some determination, particularly in that last start in the fantasy. And I just wonder if maybe she won't get loose up front. It was a close call for me between her and Desert Dawn. They're both long prices, but I don't particularly view either one as win contenders.
Yeah, we've got very similar picks here. As you can see, I also have those two favorites just below Secret Oath, just in a slightly different order. Nest and Kathleen O. I made the number 2 Nostalgic my 4th pick. Craig, I guess the one more question I have about our top pick is, should we be at all concerned about the rail post position? I know some people didn't like that draw for Secret Oath. I'm not inclined to be that worried about it. Do you view it as a hindrance?
No, I never get why in this week of the year everybody suddenly thinks inside posts are so bad. Going 2 turns, because frankly, it's every stat I've ever run, and that includes races with 14 horse fields. The inside has an advantage over the outside just from a ground saving perspective. Maybe if she were more of a speed horse that was going to try to get the lead and wind up caught 3 or 4 wide, I'd be more concerned, but she seems to be pretty readable, and I think Luis Saez can work out a trip. And obviously, I'd be a little more concerned had they not changed riders, but they did, so it doesn't bother me in the least.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes it feels like certain conventional pieces of handicapping logic get thrown out the window for Oaks and Derby week, but the rail is the shortest path around there, and she's drawn inside. And I don't think it's going to be a hindrance for her because she is a horse that travels in the bridle. She's been in traffic before and overcome it. So I feel like she's got all the tools to work out the right trip from the inside. It's Secret Oath for both Craig and I in the Kentucky Oaks on Friday at Churchill Downs. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.